Hi, I'm Marcel, and welcome to me screaming into the void, mostly about books. I'm doing Criminoli's Read What You Own challenge, where my husband has picked out 100 of our books, wrapped them up in newspaper, given them all numbers, and then unpacking them one at a time. I have just finished Carl Frode Tiller's Downhill, which has not been translated into English, but has been translated into other languages. He is more famously known for Encirclement, and there are sort of similarities between these two stories in how Carl Frode Tiller writes his stories and the themes that he talks about. So Encirclement is about a man who has amnesia, lost his memory, and people write in and tell him how he was as a youth. And it becomes quite dark in senses, not dark. It's weird, some of these words, because it's dark in the sense that it's sad dark, not let's go out and kill someone dark. But it talks a lot about sort of the everyday trauma that a sad upbringing brings with them. And his book, Downhill, is about a man who is in a form of prison/hospital. He is clearly psychologically not well, and he writes his sort of life story to figure out why he is in this prison/hospital. And again, we realize that he has had a quite sad upbringing. There has been quite a lot of everyday abuse. So it's not sort of abuse and trauma in the something traumatic individual sort of one thing that was traumatic, but it's more about the small everyday traumas that you have with a bad upbringing. So the themes of trauma is present in both of his writings. The theme of the way we tell, and I thought this was probably one of the things I enjoyed most in regard to both Encirclement and Downhill, is that both stories are about how do we create the narrative of our own traumatic past. So in both senses, we have to, one sense we have to live through our lives and we have to survive trauma. Some of us survive more trauma than others. But then we have to sort of look back, and then we have to create a form of narrative, and we have to put things into words, and we have to sort of put them in order. Which do we focus on? Which do we don't focus on? And for everyone who's sort of been to Western talk therapy, that's a lot about what sort of healing from trauma is about. How do you create a narrative to put into words what you've gone through? And that is very clearly a huge sort of topic in his writing of these two books, which are the two books I've read by him. And the way that, in one sense, you can always question, is this sort of the right way to deal with trauma? Neither characters in his two books are well due to creating these narratives. They're not really it doesn't really change anything, and yet it does change something. And of course, you can always discuss, is this sort of the right way of dealing with trauma? Is this the right way psychology should focus in on it? Different cultures do have different ways of focusing in on people with trauma, and how do people with trauma heal. But either way, it is an interesting view into the aspect of creating narratives around childhood trauma and how you organize things in that way. They are bleak books, but I think that is also why they become important. And I have to admit, I think that reading sad books, reading bleak books are important to people. Not all the time. There is something to be said about someone wallowing in misery. But reading books that are bleak and sad can give you something that isn't just wallowing in misery. One thing is, of course, empathy. You do not know what people are sort of having in their baggage, and that how you play a part in that, in both the everyday, but also in sort of the long narratives of it. And in addition, if you yourself have sort of a traumatic childhood, not necessarily just one trauma, but bleak things happened all the time, reading these books can be a form of catharsis, can be a form of catharsis, in the same way we talked about tragedy as sort of, they are tragic on behalf of me, but there is something that they are going through a form of healing process. They are going through this talk therapy. And then you can sort of read it and try to figure out if this is something that gives you something in dealing with your own trauma. So I absolutely understand why Carl Frode Tiller is becoming more and more popular. And I absolutely think, because Downhill is his debut, and this is both less polished than Encirclement. Encirclement is, in a sense, more artistic, in lack of a better term. Downhill is more brutal because it's less artistic. So it's more just, here's the bad stuff. Deal with it. While Encirclement has more of an interesting gimmick with this man who has amnesia and everyone sort of writing in to tell his story on his behalf. Because again, what happens then is, of course, he doesn't get to tell his own story, which is also a thing that can be interesting in creating the narrative around trauma, about how, if that narrative is focused only on the trauma, are you then allowed to be an agent in your own story? I am not the psychologist. I do not know. I do like Carl Frode Tiller. And now I'm going to pick my next book. And I am needing my salsa jar. I'm picking a number. And this is book 60. So give me a moment and I'll find book 60. Book 60. So Kim Stanley Robinson is an author my husband enjoys very well. I have read his, he has I think, it's a trilogy with Red Planet, Green Planet, Blue Planet. I really enjoyed Red Planet. Blue and Green, I felt like they sort of lost. He lost the plot. He lost sort of the complexity in that one. So I'm really looking forward to Galileo's Dream and just reading off the back. In late Renaissance Italy, the great scientist Galileo creates a powerful new telescope to explore the universe. But one night, a strange presence, a different kind of telescope for Galileo to peer through, and Galileo himself is not sure if he is in a dream, an enchantment, a vision, or something yet undefined. Science fiction. I'm going to enjoy this. Thank you for listening to me screaming into the void, and subscribe if you want to hear my thoughts on Galileo's Dream by Kim Stanley Robinson.